Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. So I have a very complicated relationship with this show on HBO Max or Binge if you're from Australia called The Pitt. Now, I'm going to give a spoiler-free introduction and thoughts on this show and then get into a spoiler discussion so I can explain why my relationship is complicated with it. But from the jump, when this season starts, this is like the best medical drama I've ever seen. Now, I have nurses in the family. I have a lot of healthcare professionals in my life. I've talked to them. There's a bunch on TikTok. Big selling point of this show is kind of two things. The first one is that this is super grounded medical stuff, super accurate medical stuff. Occasionally, there'll be one person on the internet that's like, that wasn't portrayed super well. But for the most part, the appeal of this show is how accurate it is to actual like real life medical situations, real life hospitals and emergency departments. And from what I understand, it does this incredibly well. They are kind of like the actors are coached by actual medical professionals. So yeah, really interesting stuff. You get really fascinating, gory procedures. It's well done. I watched the first 4 episodes of this show in one block. And the next point you realize, the next selling point you realize is that basically this season of a show is one shift. So it's 15 episodes and each episode runs for about an hour and it's an hour of a shift. So episode 1 is like 6 a.m. Episode 2 is 7 a.m. Episode 3 is 8 a.m. And it's an hour as you're watching this new batch of doctors arrive at the Pitt, arrive at this Pittsburgh emergency department. So there's a bunch of audience surrogate characters that are new to the job and they're working and figuring everything out throughout the 15 episodes. And when this show is working, this is like one of the best shows on TV. First off, the cast is stacked. It's just an incredible cast. Like everyone is on their A game. There are unlikable characters, but not in the sense that you're like, oh, the acting shit and I hate watching them. Like they're meant to be unlikable and it's so good. You get what I mean? Like there are characters you can't stand and then they do something where you're like, oh, that was actually kind of good. You know, it's just perfect characterization. The main doctor, Dr. Rabinovich, Dr. Robitussin, Dr. Robbie. So he's awesome. All right. He's from ER, from what I understand. He's excellent. And there's this incredible, like, extended cast where you understand what their vibe is from the jump. They feel very lived in. The best I can explain it is the way you turn on the first episode of Sopranos and it feels like the show has been going for 10 years. You turn this on and so many of the characters just feel like they've been here for ages. The way exposition is done in these first couple episodes is just excellent. You get a sense of who's been romantic in the past, who, like, what their relationship is, what they have going on at home. Perfect stuff. Excellent stuff. I watched the first 4 to 5 episodes in one block and I was absolutely sold, swept up. I watched it with my sister who's a nurse. We're having a great time. And the gimmick works. This idea that each episode is an hour works. There are characters who, like, there's like this guy waiting in the waiting room that just wants to get his heart checked. And for 4 hours, he pops up in and out. And he's like, please, why do I keep getting pushed back to the back of the queue? And as a result, you feel like he's been there for 4 hours. You're like, whoa, yeah, nice. But this is where the show starts to kind of fall apart slightly, and I'll get into this fully in my spoiler discussion, but after a while, as the season goes on, they start doing so much with our core characters. So much personal drama happens in like one season that you start going, is this really all happening on one shift? Like this is kind of stretching my sense of disbelief. You know what I mean? If this was a season of a normal show that took place over 3 months in universe, I wouldn't care that much. But when you remind yourself, wait, this is the same shift where this, and this happened. And I'm not just talking about the patients, because obviously working at an emergency department, yeah, you're probably going to see like 6 or 7 crazy things. But I am talking about, it just so happens that each nurse and doctor has like an insanely traumatic personal life experience unfold like on a shift, and I'm just like, it's pushing it. And when this show is working, it's executing that each hour is an hour of real life premise. But occasionally it just steers into schlock and you're like, what? Because on one hand, some of it is just so impressively realistic and grounded and well executed that then when it does this, you're like, hang on. Like, for example, as I was talking about before, I love these character arcs, I guess you want to call it. Again, it's only one shift, but I love these things where the characters actually kind of stay stuck in one place over multiple episodes. There's a girl, I'm really struggling, I'm forgetting her name, but she's the doctor that wears the pink jacket. Bro, she is annoying. at the start of the season. Annoying. Like, just constantly, I don't know if she has a major case of RBF, but just constantly turning up her nose at people, having really snarky responses for someone who's it's her first day. And throughout the shift, you realize why she's like that. You kind of get a sense that after a few interactions, she's pulling it back a bit. And it's a really nice character arc that actually feels real time. She doesn't become a different person, but you're seeing her bob in and out of this mood in a really natural way. But then there are other characters who literally like start the day and do a complete character 180, like they've done, like, yeah, as I said, like a year's worth of growth. And you're like, I know this is how TV show seasons work, but not a shift. And in my opinion, at the point we're at in the show, so I'm at episode 11 or 12, I think. We just had the reveal about the Pittsburgh Festival. If you know, you know. But at that point, I've just started watching the show as a well-made version of like those usual medical dramas of ER. You know what I mean? Because I just, my brain has to switch off in terms of this, everything's happening in one shift. But I feel like I'm being negative. So I do want to talk about some major props I have for the show, because some of this stuff is really, really well handled. So we're going to get into a spoiler discussion. Check out the show. It's really good. It's a really good medical show, and just turn your brain off for the amount of stuff that happens and goes, it's just a show. So let's get into what I really like, because I do need to get into spoilers for this. Some of this stuff is just so good. All right. This payoff with Dr. Langdon and the beef he had with, yeah, I'm really bad with names normally, and there's about 4,000 characters. So I'm going to put her name on screen, but the beef between Dr. Langdon and this woman is so well done. She's a new doctor, and she and Dr. Langdon are just having mad beef the whole time, and it's hard because I'm assuming a lot of you are similar to me. I did not like her. Oh my god, I did not like her, and I know she's a stickler, and I know she's doing her best, but yeah. However, I believed her. I believed her throughout the season. I was like, she's onto something here. Dr. Langdon is sus. And the reveal that, yeah, he is a functioning drug addict and has been stealing medicine, and she was right the whole time. It's a great moment, because Dr. Langdon, similar to us, didn't want her to be right, was discounting her. It puts you in the perspective of the audience so well. And yeah, it reframes it too. You go, okay, she was right. She was right. Dr. Langdon was shitty. Dr. Langdon made some good points when he was berating her, but we kind of need to take that with a grain of salt, because that was clearly off the back of him being high and not following proper decorum in a hospital. Next, I really like what they're doing with the shooting. Again, this falls into the category of how much is too much in terms of one shift, but I like the way they set up the shooting, and I like the way they set up the guy with the heart condition punching that doctor. I thought both of those things were just really well set up from the jump, slowly kind of delivered, slowly paid off, slowly explored, and result in really, really like horrific and well-earned moments. Now, I just need to vent, because a lot of people are talking on TikTok, on Reddit, about like, guys, I think the person at the festival might be the shooter that had the list of names that was mentioned in episode 1. Not sure if you guys put that together. Sorry to be mean. How could you not have put it together? It's been not only set up in episode 1, but it has been consistently referenced that Rabinowitz, Dr. Robbie, has been, kind of like dismissive of that initial shooting. That he's had multiple discussions about it with that woman with the ankle bracelet. Like, there have been a bunch of discussions about this shooter, and he's talking to the mum in the episode where the shooting happens. The mum's like, I need to talk to you about my son, the potential shooter. And he's like, we can, put our resources together, and you have to be the one to make it. You can't do it anonymously. They literally had a chat about it. And then at the end of the episode, people are like, do you think it could be him? I'm like, yes, but let me cook on this. Prediction. I wouldn't hate if it was a different shooter. Hot take, I know. I think it would be a really great character moment if the shooter was someone else, and then Dr. Robbie had this like wake up call. One, it helps with the realism, because at this point we've had so much happen in a shift, which I will get to. But I really love the idea that there is a shooter, and it's just a wake-up call to Dr. Robbie. And he goes, oh, this is why I need to take this sort of stuff seriously, because we literally had a shooting today. It also highlights how kind of the epidemic of gun violence in America and how common it is, the fact that he can have a shooting threat, but another shooting happens. And yeah, it also just makes it feel a little less convenient. Okay, so now I need to vent, all right? Because in one shift, and there will be stuff I forget, but let's just talk about the personal lives of the doctors. One has been punched. One has confronted a PDF file clearly linking to their own experience in that department, own childhood trauma. One has literally like threatened a PDF file on their first shift. One has had their ex show up with their child to the hospital. One has had a miscarriage. One has gone toe-to-toe and fumbled a situation with a shooter, which, if this is paid off, has also happened. What else has happened? Like, look, stuff like being pissed on is fine. That seems like very typical medical stuff. But I'm saying all of this stuff happening. Oh, an ambulance has been stolen. So in the same day, there's going to be a shooting. Dr. Langdon has been fired. An ambulance has been stolen. Someone confronted a PDF file. Someone's ex has showed up. Miscarriage. Is it not stretching it just slightly? Like, just slightly, I feel like it's stretching it a bit thin. Now, all the crazy medical stuff that happens, I don't mind. You know what I mean? We've had like someone, like a bunch of college people or high schoolers take bad drugs. Even the shooting I can kind of deal with, but all of it combined and all of their personal connections to these stories is pushing it slightly for me. And that's kind of the thing I've been struggling. Again, she got punched. I don't know. I feel like you could have done like maybe 2 of these a season, 2 of these a shift, and I would have had an easier time. But regardless, the issue is you get really great character moments from this. So, for example, the miscarriage leads to this incredible moment between Dr. Robbie and Dr. Collins, where it's essentially like very subtly communicated that they had a relationship in the past, and the miscarriage she had reminds her of an intentional abortion she had, and it's implied that that was his abortion, right? It implied no, that was terrible wording. I'm so sorry. It implies that that was an abortion she had while with him. That was essentially like his baby that she wasn't ready to have. They don't spell this out for you, but you can see in the way he takes some pause, the way he takes it personally, and they're kind of talking around it like, I'm sure he would forgive you. It's just so like, or I'm sure he would understand. It's just so well done and such a good moment. And that's the issue is as heightened as this season is in terms of how much stuff happens, how much stuff they cram in, the moments you get from it are just so good. Like even Dr. Langdon getting fired, like all of them combined is a lot, but the payoff there is earned and well done and really exciting. You know, Dr. Santos being right was like, yeah, like kind of a hard moment for the audience, but also you're like, okay, cool. I think it's also really well done because it cuts off a potential romance we saw forming between Dr. King and Dr. Langdon. I think it's really well done because you saw them building this bond and she clearly cared about Dr. Langdon, and now that's cut off for her and that was kind of her favorite guy. You know what I mean? Also, I love the exploration of Dr. King. From my understanding, you're allowed to correct me in the comments, she is neurodivergent, but super interesting stuff. Just really an interesting character, a well-defined character, and just I love the way this show sets up like 20 characters in the first episode and they all feel super unique, super different, super real, like really well-defined characters. Dr. Mohan is a great character. I think she's excellent. I think the performance is fantastic. And I also think her arc throughout the season is what I want to see more of, like grounded stuff that feels like it takes place over the shift. Dr. Robbie is kind of on her butt, on her case about like you're spending way too much time with the patients, and you see this kind of come up in good ways and bad ways throughout the season. Sometimes it's a good thing and you get why she does it. Sometimes it is kind of unnecessarily long and annoying, and you get why Dr. Robbie has been like, I just told you about this. But overall, it's when the show is working well, it's this great moment of like, you'll watch a character interact with someone and get why maybe they're wrong in that situation, and then they'll scurry off over here and they'll crush another interaction. And it's just, it really feels like you're in a dynamic workplace. You know, you see the way different people are in these different interactions just so well. And it's so interesting to see how each character has their own strengths in some departments and sucks in other departments. Also, shout out to Dr. McKay, just an excellent character. I don't really have too much to say. I love, even again, like a whole realism aside with how much happens, I love the scene where she goes toe-to-toe with her ex-husband's new girlfriend. Just good moment, like good TV schlock. Next we have Javadi. Yo, what is her deal? What is her deal? This was the pink jacket woman I was talking about before. She's rough, but weirdly enough, as the season goes on, like she was driving me mental. Me and my sister were like, oh my God, every time she was on screen. But at a certain point, she becomes really likable. It's slow and it creeps up on you, but then she goes to ask this guy out. She tries to ask him on a date, and it instantly humanizes her when it flops, when it tanks, when it doesn't go her way. I think it was so well done, and I think as you learn that her mother is this really important doctor in the hospital or in the field, I think she owns the hospital. She's very important from what I understood. But when you find this out, and that's why everyone looks at her a certain way, and that's why she's kind of like nervous and says the wrong things and kind of polarizes people. Really good character stuff. I really, really respect it. Now I need to bring up my final two nitpicks around this show and why I have a complicated relationship with this show. The first one is the whole gimmick of this show. The whole selling point is that it's real time. It's each hour is a real hour on the floor of the pit. You know, you're like, whoa, cool, wow. Why are there flashbacks? Why are there flashbacks to Dr. Robbie's COVID PTSD? All right, I understand it. I'm not a COVID denier. COVID sucked. COVID was really bad. All right, I know people that have died from COVID complications. I work for someone who, if they caught COVID, they will probably die, and they've been a shut-in because of that. All right, like, it is a serious thing. I'm not saying COVID isn't a big deal. All right, I get his PTSD. I get how bad it was for medical care professionals. My issue is just the fact that this was meant to be a real-time, locked-in show. We've never left the hospital, really. We've never left the POV. Everything is, anything that's going on outside of the hospital is FaceTimed in, or kind of what we can see through newspaper clippings or through the TV. You know what I mean? Like, when the ambulance is stolen, you're watching it the way the characters are. When the festival, is set up, the shooting is set up, it's through a FaceTime call. We don't cut to the shooting. We don't cut to the ambulance. Why are we having flashbacks that break up the continuity? The whole point was that it's real time. Why are we exiting? I know it's a little thing. It's only like 30 seconds of the show, but I'm just like, why didn't you communicate that another way? Like, it always frustrates me. It's like when movies have only like two characters, and then like in the last 20 minutes, they introduce a third one for 2 minutes. You're like, what are you doing? Maybe this is a nerd critique, all right? Maybe this didn't bug anyone except me, but it bugged me a little. Next, the way the show handles social issues is kind of cooked. Hear me out on this one. So I don't mind a show addressing social issues, and obviously in a hospital, it's going to come up all the time. But the way the writing goes from really grounded and really realistic and like normal to when they're covering a social issue, they just kind of like turn it into an after school special, and it sounds like an infomercial, or sorry, not an infomercial, like a government approved commercial on like social issues. Like, good example is, do I agree that there's a bunch of toxic red pill anti-female podcast stuff out there that then warps men's brains? Absolutely. But the conversation between Dr. Rabinovich and the mum in the last episode, where she's like, oh, I'm really worried about my boy. And then he sits there and goes like, yeah, these podcasts come out that preach toxic ideals and are really warping the minds of all males out there. And your son is just another victim of a wider epidemic affecting a bunch of young men to this day. We all need to keep in mind what our sons are watching online, because this grows toxic men. I'm like, first off, it doesn't make sense for Dr. Rabinovich to really be saying this with his chest this much and have this thorough understanding when he fucked up earlier and didn't address this properly. Like, yes, obviously we're all aware that these toxic males exist, but he clearly wasn't showing this level of like insight and understanding and like real drive for it before. So him being the one to say it is strange, but also no one talks like this. No one talks like this. Like, what you would have said at the moment at most is like, yeah, it's crazy the way the internet's fucking up these men, I swear. That's how normal people talk. They don't sit there and monologue to a mum who's already worried that the shooting's happening. Like, you both get it, and that's the thing. Like, the way this show addresses social issues at certain points is this way of like, these two characters are on the same page, so the way they're talking is only for us, the audience. There's another scene where someone makes a mistake, or, depending how you view this, they make an assumption about a character who is overweight, and the doctor is like, oh, you did this treatment and not that treatment because you didn't check them properly because you assumed they were unhealthy because they were overweight. And she goes, oh, really? I didn't, oh, shit. Okay. I really didn't mean to do that. Whatever. They have like a normal interaction. And then again, it turns into this thing of like, and that's a big thing in medical treatment today that blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I don't disagree with the social issue and I get why it's important, but these scenes go on past the point where normal conversation would end and just kind of keeps going and keeps going. Like they do it a lot. They do it a lot. There was another one where Dr. Robbie is talking to someone who is in denial that they are an addict because they're addicted to oxycodone, yeah. And Dr. Robbie is like, the thing with addicts is sometimes they can blend into society like everyone else. And it's hard to spot an addict. You need to look for really subtle signs, but they can be there. And at the end of the day, there is no idea of a functional drug addict. And again, just like the way it was worded, I was just like, okay. And then there was this other surreal moment. There was this other insane moment in the show where, again, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because the show is trying to be realistic and grounded. But there's this moment where there's this woman doesn't want to wear a mask or something. She's like anti-mask, anti-vax, whatever, right? She doesn't want to wear a mask. And then the doctor is like, okay, well, what we're going to do, because you don't like masks, is we're going to do surgery with no masks on. We're going to do that. Would you like that? Would you like that? And I'm like, really? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I wish I had more examples because it's popped up throughout the show. Just this like kind of thing of we need to address, the sickle cell thing. That's a perfect example. Sickle cell is actually a failing in the medical industry. You know what I mean? It's something that society has overlooked because of racial prejudice, not prioritized the same way. Totally relevant. And for the most part, it is executed perfectly in this show. They explore it really well. And you're like, whoa, really interesting, really compelling. And then there is this scene where Dr. Robbie and her have a conversation about stuff they both already agree on, both already know, just to spell it out to the audience. And I just wish these sections just had one more kind of do-over in the writing room to make it between characters that kind of need this information. Give the show credit. The moment where Dr. King handles a neurodivergent or an autistic patient much better than Dr. Langdon was, and she knows to like dim the lights, dim the room, talk to him a different way, is really good. It's a great example of this. And there isn't any like major hand holding of like, sometimes they get sensory overloaded and blah. Like she explains it in a way that makes sense for her character to Dr. Langdon. He sees it as an oversight in his training, in his experience. It feels authentic. It informs the audience, but also makes sense within the characters. It's a genuine earned moment that doesn't sacrifice writing or realism to get the message home. It's perfectly executed, and I wish we got more of that throughout the show. For example, there's a lot of exposition that is done to the doctors that are having their first day. That makes sense. There's a lot of like explaining what's happening for the audience, but explaining in a way where it's like, well, that makes sense in world because these are doctors that don't know this stuff. It's their first day. Whereas when it comes to the social issues, I just think they could do it better. I just think whether have it be with a patient that doesn't understand this stuff. But yeah, I don't know, rant over. I think the frustration and the reason I've said all this stuff is because I love this show. Every week it comes on, I'm like, I can't wait to watch this show. I cannot wait to watch this show. But this is what's holding it back from being perfect. You know what I mean? It's a strong recommendation to anyone that likes medical shows. This is like the best medical show ever. I think it's great. But these are just the things that are getting in the way of me saying this is like Severance level. This is like the best show on TV. That's sort of where I'm coming from. And I feel like I'm not alone here. I'm really wondering if you guys are feeling the same way. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting. Also gain a membership to this channel. I'm covering every episode of The White Lotus as it comes out. Thank you so much for watching and have a lovely day.